This is not much behind me, but you get the idea. I'm up at EMU on a cold day. And I just want to record this brief video to talk a little bit about comments on the emails. Hopefully you'll see some slides and stuff like that over my shoulder when I edit this all together. The first thing I wanted to point out is that one of the things that's really interesting to me about reading through these emails and your memos and thoughts on that is the ways in which these little assignments, which seem like they're just common sense and really, not something a lot of work, you don't have to think very hard about it, can really kind of trip people up. Because what I saw in some of these assignments or some of these email writings was people breaking some basic golden rules. The first golden rule is that you've got to turn stuff in on time. The second golden rule is you've got to follow instructions. So there was a bunch of people who didn't turn stuff in on time, but the other thing that was interesting was a bunch of people who sent emails to the wrong address. My email address is skrause@emish.edu. Doesn't have any numbers in it. There's some poor sap out there who's got an email address skrause2@emish.edu who gets these emails from me all the time. I feel bad for that person, but that's not me. But the point is, that was in the assignment, it was in the instructions. So if you didn't do that right, that's an example of just not following the instructions. The other thing that's interesting is that with these very short assignments, every single word becomes that much more important. And it's interesting to think about this in relationship to the way we assign stuff, or that writing gets assigned in college classrooms generally. Usually length is a value. Usually it's something like you have to write at least 1,500 words or something like that. In this case, though, brevity is the value, and as a result of that, every single sentence matters. Every single word choice matters. So all it takes is one little word off, and the whole thing kind of collapses. And again, in terms of the instructions thing, one of the things that I found striking was people didn't write necessarily emails, but they wrote things that were kind of like emails. So there was in the body of the email would say subject, and then you make the fake email subject line there. So anyways, those kinds of details. And I think that that's emblematic of a lot of the writing we're doing in this class. A lot of these sorts of assignments, these sort of things like writing letters or writing emails or writing a personal statement or writing instructions or whatever, may seem very rudimentary, may seem very mundane, may seem like the sort of thing you don't really need to practice. And yet, it turns out that these little things hold so much meaning and can trip people up in some interesting ways. And I think that I saw that with a number of these assignments. So use this as an assignment to think carefully about entering into the next assignments and maybe how you might want to contemplate revising, but we'll talk more about that later on. One other thing about the email assignment that I'll mention for now, that I saw this come up again and again, a lot of times people would use exclamation points in places to make things exciting. As in like, we're changing our newsletter format, or we'd really like to invite you to come to our class, or something like that. And exclamation points get overused a lot in these kinds of documents. My bias against them and my advice to you for future reference is to remember punctuation alone doesn't make something interesting. So just because you add an exclamation point behind it doesn't mean that all of a sudden it becomes an interesting sentence. So you might want to do something to the sentence before the exclamation point to make it interesting if that's part of what you're going for. Now, let me talk briefly about the next peer review, which is going to begin on Friday of this week. I am going to set up on Thursday, I'll post a link for everybody to the Google Docs survey that accompanies this round of peer review. And I'll explain that in the email or the web page post when I do that. But what I want to tell you about now is the next peer review process, and really for the rest of the semester, is going to involve a little bit more work on your end. When you complete each peer review, you're going to need to fill out this form, this Google document survey about the peers that you just got done reviewing. That's part of the process for me to see what it is that you've done in terms of the comments. And it's also part of the process for each of you to see in one place the comments that people have given you about your essay project. So the point is that that's coming up, and that's something that everybody needs to do as part of the peer review process. Not doing that is going to mean you're not going to get full credit for the peer review process, and that would be bad. Okay, I think that's about it for now. We'll press on with the letters of recommendation, or not letters of recommendation. We'll press on with the letters of complaint and the letters of adjustment. We'll start working on that peer review this Friday. It'll be finished on this Monday, and then I believe it's due next Friday. Okay, see you online.